Donald Trump is not running for president to make America great again. Donald Trump is not running for president to represent the people that voted for him in 2016 and 2020. Donald Trump is running to stay out of prison. And if we elect, listen, I know the truth is hard. But if we elect Donald Trump, we are willingly giving Joe Biden 4 more years in the White House, and America can't handle that.
Oof. Republican voters were not buying with GOP presidential candidate. He's a candidate? Will Hurd was selling during the party's annual Lincoln dinner in Des Moines, Iowa over the weekend. His anti-Trump comments led to jeers and boos from the crowd, which clearly still supports the former president. But look, don't take that mere anecdotal evidence as the only indicator of where right-wing voters stand today. Trump still manages to crush the competition as he prepares for a likely 3rd indictment for his alleged role in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Now, according to the latest New York Times Siena poll of likely Republican voters, a whopping 54% say that they still plan to vote for Trump in the primaries. Ron DeSantis comes in at a distant second with just 17% of likely GOP voters supporting the Florida governor. Now, this isn't a good sign for conservatives hoping that the primary winner will be someone with, like less baggage. The Times argues that no other candidate in history has lost a nomination with as much support as Trump has. Breaking results down a little bit further, the poll categorized likely Republican voters into 3 separate buckets: the MAGA base, persuadable voters, and individuals who are not open to Trump. These are the never Trumpers. So as you can see from this graphic, members of Trump's MAGA base represent 37% of the Republican electorate. They strongly support him in the Republican primary and have a very favorable view of him. The demographics of this group represent the most conservative, the most populist wing of the Republican Party. They tend to be blue-collar workers without a college degree. Now, outside of the MAGA base, 37% of Republican voters are keeping an open mind and can be persuaded to vote for another candidate. Although about 17% of those in this particular category say that they lean toward Trump. And the third category, the never Trumpers, represent 25% of Republican voters, and they are not fans of Trump, clearly. So the never Trumpers are pretty easy to define. Let's talk about their characteristics, okay? So these voters tend to be educated, affluent, moderate, and they're often more than just Trump skeptics. A majority of these voters view him unfavorably, say he's committed crimes, and don't even back him in the general election against President Biden, whether that's because they actually prefer Biden or simply wouldn't vote. Now, if you're wondering whether Trump's legal woes concern the MAGA base, his most avid supporters, the simple answer is no. In fact, they don't even believe that he has committed any crimes at all.
Supporters who came to see Trump in Pennsylvania Saturday are standing by him.
It's political garbage, and I'm not going to swear, but that's what it is. They're just trying to smear his name, and it's not working.
So that lady's reaction to all of these criminal indictments that Trump is now dealing with, I think is pretty representative of what the MAGA base overall feels about these prosecutions, about these indictments. They just think that it's a political witch hunt and that these indictments wouldn't have even happened had Trump decided against running for president again. Now, according to the Times, not a single one of the respondents in the MAGA category agreed that the former president committed any serious federal crimes. Only 2% of them said, they admitted that he did something wrong in his handling of classified documents. But more than 90% said that Republicans need to stand behind Trump in the face of these investigations. So in order for one of his primary opponents to actually beat him, support needs to consolidate for one candidate among persuadable and not open to Trump voters. And look, that's hard to see play out at this current moment, considering this vast field of contenders. I didn't even know Will Hurd was running. But It's gonna be tough because there are notable differences between the persuadable GOP voters and the never Trumpers. So as the Time reports, Trump skeptics support additional military and economic aid to Ukraine and comprehensive immigration reform, while they oppose a 6-week abortion ban. The persuadable voters, on the other hand, take the opposite view on all of those issues. So I want to give you a sense of what the Times means on those issues and how different the persuadable voters are from the never Trumpers. So while 61% of persuadable voters say that America is in danger of failing, only 37% of never Trumpers say the same. In other findings, 58% of persuadable voters oppose more aid to Ukraine, but only 26% of never Trumpers agree. Persuadable voters are more likely to support DeSantis, considering 41% want to punish woke businesses, which of course is comparable to what DeSantis is currently doing with Disney in Florida. Only 28% of never Trumpers agree with that. And while 69% of never Trumpers have an unfavorable view of him, only 12% of persuadable voters do. Remember, among the persuadable voters, 17% of them are already leaning toward Trump anyway. So it's gonna be hard for one of Trump's primary opponents to consolidate enough support to beat Trump. And guess what? Trump, of course, is having a field day with these poll results and has taken the opportunity to troll his opponents about it. In fact, he plans to skip the first primary debate, which is set to take place on Fox News on August 23rd in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In a Truth Social post, he writes, quote, "Let them debate so I can see who I might consider for vice president." Now, who's they? So far, there's Governor Ron DeSantis, of course, Senator Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Doug Burgum. They've all qualified for that debate. So far, Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence, has yet to meet the criteria to qualify, which requires at least 1% in 3 high-quality national polls or a mix of national and early state polls between July 1st and August 21st. Now, in addition, candidates must have a minimum of 40,000 donors with 220 or more states. Since Trump is skipping the first debate, he might end up doing some, sort of rival event, typical Trump fashion. The Associated Press reported that one option Trump has floated is a sit-down interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Of course, the very guy who publicly supported Trump and then privately said terrible things about Trump, basically compared him to a demon. So anyway, let's circle back to Meatball Ron, who's been pretty much slipping in the polls for months now. Ed Rollins, who's a veteran GOP strategist, brutally assessed DeSantis as a flawed candidate while talking to Rolling Stone. He said that every time DeSantis opens his mouth, he has a tendency to, shall we say, think out loud, and he clearly doesn't understand the game. Iowa is not Florida, and he just doesn't get it. He's not a particularly articulate candidate, and the skill you need to become president is typically being able to show voters you connect with them and that you understand their problems. In fact, he even gave examples of presidential candidates that he felt did really well because of their ability to connect with voters. And he was pretty bipartisan in listing those examples. He mentioned Barack Obama, and to be fair, Barack Obama, especially in 2008 with his Hope and Change campaign, certainly did connect with voters who were concerned about their economic conditions and also concerned about the wars abroad. Now, unfortunately, Obama didn't deliver on a lot of those promises, and I think that ended up hurting the Democratic Party. But that's beside the point. Let's get back to what Rollins had to say about DeSantis. He also argued that when you get into these culture wars the way that DeSantis has, the vast majority of people don't understand what they are. That may work in parts of Florida, but not these other places he needs to win. That is not what sells. And to be clear, Ron DeSantis has centered anti-wokeness, the woke mind virus, as the main issue in his campaigning. It's just not really working out that well for him. Now, Rollins goes on to predict that Biden is likely to get elected if Trump wins the Republican primary. He says, quote, "I would be shocked if Trump were not the nominee. And at the end of the day, I don't see how Trump is a viable presidential candidate. So unless something serious happens, Biden is probably going to get a second term. And I could even see Republicans losing their majority in the House." Look, there's a lifetime between now and Iowa's caucus on January 15th. So honestly, who knows what will actually happen? However, Trump's legal problems are in fact hurting his campaign financially.
The Republican frontrunner slammed the new charges, which include allegations he tried to have his surveillance video erased after receiving a subpoena for documents. On Sunday, Trump posted to social media Mar-a-Lago security tapes were not deleted, and I never told anybody to delete them. While the criminal charges against the former president mount, so do the legal fees. CBS News has learned that a public filing later today will show Trump's Political Action Committee, Save America, has spent more than $40 million on legal expenses for Trump and his aides on multiple legal cases this year.
I mean, his campaign is now fundraising for his legal defense fund. It is amazing how loyal Trump's base is to him. And believe it or not, Trump's campaign spending that money to defend him in court does not break campaign finance laws. And while any other campaign would be hindered by the financial and electoral costs associated with a candidate that's accused of so much criminality, for now it seems that Trump's loyal base is likely to pull through and clinch primary victory for the former president. But again, it's still super early. We don't know what could happen. And should Trump actually be convicted of any of the crimes he's been indicted for, I am curious to see how it plays out for the Republican Party in the general election. It's gonna be a wild ride, and I guess we're gonna wait and see what happens.
All right, thanks for watching this free clip of Old School. Don't forget to become a TYT member today for the rest of the show and for more exclusive content throughout the network. Join now at tyt.com/join.